Hello, Corona Beans. I'm doing this video even though I still have no idea how to begin it because I've been putting it off entirely too long and I want to stop putting it off anymore. So, as you may be able to tell from the title, this is a fan theory history of Black Widow. And to start with, I'm going to explain. I think we see MCU's Black Widow in another series, and I think that series is, oh my goodness, the sun, is the one, the only, the great Adventures in Odyssey, and I think she's Tasha. She's Jason's girlfriend, fiancé, and I want to get into it. We're going to start, I think, by talking about how I think Odyssey can fit into the MCU. And I'm going to start somewhere super basic, but whatever. We're going to start with the eccentric rich inventors. They are not unique to either Odyssey or the MCU, but whatever. Let's talk about Odyssey's version first, and then get into the MCU. So, Odyssey's version, Mr. Whittaker, John Avery Whittaker himself, Mr. Whit. So let's talk about Mr. Whittaker. Without him, yes, Odyssey couldn't exist the way we know it. But he invented the Imagination Station. He programmed applesauce. He started with End, and he works for the agency. These are all things without which Odyssey couldn't exist. Well, I mean, it could exist without applesauce. I suppose you could enjoy Odyssey without the Imagination Station, not without Wit's End, and I guess the agency is kind of not necessary to all the plot stories, and he's not the only agency character, so anyhow. And on the MCU we have, of course, Tony Stark. He invented Iron Man. He programmed Jarvis and all the other AI things. He funded the Avengers, and he works with S.H.I.E.L.D. I mean, they have kind of similar characters in which you can't have without them, which is interesting, but doesn't exactly prove. So, let's talk about the tech that these inventors have invented. And so, the Imagination Station is, I guess, what I'm going to talk about first. And it is, for those of you who don't know, you're missing out entirely. It's the greatest thing. I don't fully know how it's supposed to work, but basically, you go into the room, and you imagine, and it's like you're really in like a historical time period, and it uses your brain to create a false world. And this reminds me of a tech Iron Man invented that you may have heard of, called BARF, Binary Augmented Retroframing, which uses your brain to relive memories and change them, which make it seem real, which is like the Imagination Station with a mental health purpose as opposed to just a fun purpose. I mean, they're the same thing. I would compare applesauce and Jarvis. But the one's a kind of cool computer program that is fun, and the other is an AI. So, I mean, apart from them being both really good inventors as well as being really good programmers, they don't really, I said that backwards, oh well, they don't really, I wouldn't really say that so much, but yes, the tech, Tony may have borrowed an idea or two, or the writer, in case we're being realistic. Then let's see. Now, the agency. The agency. SHIELD. The agency. Let's be honest. If Marvel wasn't trying to sell SHIELD merch and Agents of SHIELD and all the SHIELD stuff, it would be referred to as the agency, because, that's just how you refer to a secret agency. You don't go blurting out their acronym all the time. You don't go naming them all the time. You go, the agency, the Federal Bureau, you, pretend kind of to be what you're not. You tell the truth, but you, let them assume that you're part of a better-known agency, and it's just whatever. But, yeah. Next, their actions. In the actions of the agency of SHIELD, they are similar. Kind of. SHIELD kidnaps people to get their help. This is a regular thing. This is, what they do. They kidnap, they lie. The agency does very similar things. In The Search for Wit, you learn that Mr. Whitaker, he hasn't been kidnapped, but he's been lied to. The agency in The Search for Wit is using Mr. Whitaker's very legit archaeological expedition to try and catch terrorists, which sounds like a SHIELD plot. And yeah, it sounds like, we'll help you fund this in exchange for some favors that maybe they shouldn't be giving out because they're not trained for it. Whatever. Next up, we're going to talk about the deaths. SHIELD's death, most famous death, quote unquote, is of course Agent Coulson. He dies in the Avengers and then goes on to have his own TV show in which he's perfectly alive. Yeah, the agency does something very similar. Because Odyssey's a radio show, and it's been lasting since the 80s, some of the characters have died. And so what happens is their characters fade out of the story for a bit, and then because they're so beloved, they come back, and you have to come up with an excuse as to where they've been. So it's pretty common for, them to have been off on an agency mission, which is what's happened in The Search for Wit. Or, in the case of Jason, he, they tell everybody he's dead. In the Green Wing Conspiracy, they tell everybody that Jason's dead, and everybody knows that Jason's dead, and then it turns out that Jason's not dead. Spoilers! He's not dead. Nobody's shocked. And so, it's just their actions are so similar. So similar. So, SHIELD is the agency. Or at least, I'm pretty sure about that. So talking about Jason and the agency brings us back to Black Widow. Brings us back to Tasha. Brings us back to Natasha Romanoff. From my research, looking into this, I discovered that in the MCU, Natasha Romanoff is never actually referred to as Tasha, which is odd, if you ask me. Because she goes Natalie, she goes by Natasha, Natalie, Nat, she goes by Natalia, I think. She goes by all these variations on her real name. She doesn't go